Awesome. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. I'm going to share my screen. We've started a new, we like to read a poem while people are coming in. So this one's by Natalie Diaz, and I'll start now. The river is my sister. I am its daughter. It is my hands when I drink from it, my own eye when I am weeping, and my desire when I ache like a yucca bell in the night. The river says, open your mouth to me, and I will make you more. Because even a river can be lonely. Even a river can die of thirst. I am both, the river and its vessel. It maps me alluvium, a net of moon-colored fish. I've flashed through it like copper wire.
I love that.
Yeah, so we love water over here at A Wild Note. And Nancy noted that we did water focus all year on our Lunch and Learns, partially because of just the shifting landscape around the waters of the U.S. And we had a really cool eDNA presentation in the beginning of the year about utilizing eDNA to see what's in the water. And then we talked about the WOTUS, and I forget the other one, Nancy. Oh no, that was also soils. It was with Phil. It was a wetland delineation, but
wetland focused.
It was wetland focused, but we did focus on the Fab 4 of what he calls the Fab 4 of the soil indicators that really end up being most of the soil indicators. So anyway, welcome everyone. My name is Kristen Hazard. I am the founder and CEO of Wild Note. And I'm here with our co-founder, Nancy Douglas.
Hey, everybody.
If you haven't done the poll, please do that. That's super helpful for us. And
folks are jamming on the poll. And Sheryl, news for you. We've got a lot of newbies for SDAM. So it's going to be very...
No pressure. So what I hear you saying is everything's going to be amazing new information.
That's right.
Exactly. Great. Exactly. No one's going to correct me.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to share this slide here. I just think this is the cutest photo of you. So let's see if that goes good. Okay, good. So I will now, we're excited because we're attempting to release more and more workflows, environmental workflows on Wild Note, and we released the national ordinary high watermark workflow recently. So we're super excited about that, and that gave us an opportunity to bring Sheryl on to talk about both the OHWM and the EPA's SDAM. So that we're going to combine those topics. And Cheryl's been a customer for a long time, and she's always given us such great feedback and such practical wisdom about her workflows. So we're so happy to have her here. She's a senior botanist and wetland specialist at Stantec with over a decade of environmental consulting experience across the West. She holds a BS in botany and an MS in biology from San Francisco State. At Stantec, she supports major infrastructure and utility projects, solar, fiber, transportation, transmission, leading floristic surveys, aquatic resource delineations, technical reporting, and agency coordination for aquatic permitting. Her work spans field biology, regulatory requirements, and the practical realities of complex project environments. So I was talking to Sheryl about her bio, her background, and she said something I thought was especially useful for young botanists out there because she came in as a botanist. Do we have any of those on the call, I wonder? She shared that she started as a botanist and eventually expanded into aquatic resources, partly because aquatic work can keep you billable yearly. So I think that goes to her practicality and, let's keep myself billable. Let's keep it busy. So with that, welcome, Sheryl. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. Let me just get my slides.
So I'm going to start with just a little three-parter here. We're going to do tips and tricks of the ordinary high watermark and SDAM, avoiding common pitfalls and optimizing workflows. But what we're going to start with is some caveats. So Cheryl is an expert on the West Coast, mostly what Arid West and Mountain. Is that right?
Western Mountains. Yep.
And Western Mountains and streams. So, you know, our national geography is so diverse that that's a very specific part of the country that she's an expert in. So a lot of her experience will come from that. And along those same lines, the Army Corps is so diverse and siloed and region based that her experience with the Army Corps is San Francisco, Sacramento, and LA. So just know that when we're kind of going into things. So Cheryl, if we can start with the discussion on how the SDAM and OHWM, like at a 10,000 foot level, are related, and maybe even with the wetland delineation as well. If you could start there.
Yeah, so can you all see my screen? I just want to check before I proceed. Yeah, okay. So yeah, for those of us who do wetland delineations, or those, who don't and are learning, I mean, we say wetland delineation, which is shorthand really, and what I've been trying to train myself to say is aquatic resource delineation. Because when you go out to do these delineations, you're not only doing wetlands, but you're also mapping things with ordinary high water mark, so other waters. And then, so sometimes, depending on where you are, sometimes in California, I'm doing, an SDAM form, an ordinary high water mark form, wetland, sample point form. And then even there's a MESA protocol that's a whole other conversation for certain projects in California. So you can have up to 4 forms that I'm familiar with or more. So an aquatic resource delineation is comprehensive of all the aquatic resources and the agencies that care about them on your project.
Is a MESA thing, is that a desert MESA?
Yeah, so that's something that CDFW developed as a part of to address large scale solar in the desert. And so it's this other protocol, because what was happening with CDFW was there was a question about whether they had jurisdiction over these wash and kind of ephemeral systems. Is there a real top of bank? So they developed this system to document what CDFW says is their jurisdiction. There have been, this is a whole other talk. There have been court cases, and some people do it and others don't. And I tend to go from a conservative approach on large scale solar and use that also while we're doing the field data collection. So we're covered. Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. Okay. So that's the high level. And then moving through, we already went through this, my background. I'm more familiar with the Arid West, Western Mountains, Valley and Coast. I've done a tiny bit of PNW, and then familiar with the district offices, as Kristen mentioned. And these photos are just more, this is an example of what I'm used to delineating most of the time.
Dry.
Very dry, but things are there. The thing about the Arid West is water moves through it, and you can it's almost more obvious than in more wet places. But so I just want to start with the SDAM, so the Streamflow Duration Assessment Methods, and why they exist. So I know they've been, it's been in the PNW, the Pacific Northwest, for years before other regions developed it. I think I worked on a project 6 years ago where we were using the PNW SDAMs, and it's very straightforward up there. It's a flow chart and you get to your answer. But the reason why this is becoming more important, and the EPA has spent time to develop this, is because of changes in definitions of waters of the US, where nothing that's ephemeral is an Army Corps jurisdictional water. So across the US, and especially in the Arid West, the difference between intermittent and ephemeral becomes very important. And in the old, before SDAMs, in an ordinary high watermark form, you're not capturing anything that really is indicative of aquatic, of regime, right? And, we know Cowardin codes, and we understand the definitions between intermittent. Oh, can you hear me? I think my headphone just dropped. Okay. We know the definitions between perennial, intermittent, and ephemeral, but there wasn't a uniform way of gathering indicators of those. So a lot of it was going off vibes. You would make calls, and it didn't super matter because it didn't play into jurisdiction on the federal level. It does now. It really matters now. So the SDAMs are a quantitative way of determining regime to make the conversations with the Army Corps more straightforward. Is the idea.
Right.
And doing the SDAM, so this can reduce data requests from the Corps when you're in consultation, going back and forth with them. And I have an example of that. And I just want to point out that the SDAM regions are different from the regions we use for ordinary high and wetland determination data forms. You can see the PNW has its own special SDAMs, and then once you get back east, things get a little different as well. It's just a good distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's complicate it as much as we can.
Yeah, exactly. So I have one example I wanted to share for you because I don't know about you all, but I love to go to these things and when people give me real examples, and I love to just kind of collect all of these like anecdotes, which help inform what I do, because I feel like there's so many unknowns and you don't know until you just do it. So I like these things. So we submitted an approved jurisdictional determination request to the Army Corps to the Nevada section. And this was when the SDAMs were still in beta mode in the Arid West. So it was beta. We hadn't implemented it in our field collection yet. Yeah. So we set this AJD in that did not use SDAMs. And we got a letter, and you can see in the top, I didn't highlight it, that it says the AJD request meets the minimal requirements, but they want more information. So the highlighted section, we're requesting a narrative providing what justifies delineating this one drainage as intermittent, and how this does or does not receive input besides precipitation.
Right.
So yeah, if you read between the lines, they're basically saying, you said this was intermittent. We don't really think it is. We don't think it's ours, but we need you to tell us how and why it's ephemeral, if that's the case. I
wonder if other folks on the call are also getting those same communications.
Yeah, I would be curious to know too. So in this case, it was just one drainage. So it was really easy. What I didn't do the work. So I went back to my tech and I gave him the framework of SDAM, and I asked him to compose a letter using the framework of SDAM, responding to this, and look at your photos, remember what you did out there. And I suspected that it was an ephemeral drainage. This is someone who I like habitually, we disagree about regime. So having SDAM is great because now I'm like, it'll settle it, right? At least in this framework. So I had him write just this letter and send it back to the senior PM who from the Corps, who's Sam Bohannon, who's been great to work with. And he just wrote this narrative, and he revised, his call upon further inspection of XYZ based on SDAM. We actually think that this is an ephemeral stream. It's not intermittent. So we revised this, we wrote the narrative, we sent it back to the Corps, and they concurred that it was ephemeral, and we got our stamp on our AJD, and we moved on. And that was a 6-week delay, so it wasn't significant. This was not a big deal. We've had another project that had over 200 aquatic resources mapped on it before SDAMs in the same time period, and we got a request back for 75 additional data points to get this approved JD done. And it's not because the Corps is trying to be annoying, it's because they want to make the correct calls under the regulations, and they can't do it if they don't have the information to do it. So this is why it's important to do it up front, especially if you're dealing with a lot of resources that you're mapping.
Right. So you had to go back out on that second example.
The second one, it was a couple-week effort to go back out and collect additional data to get it in the right framework that they wanted. Right. Not a good situation to be in. So, as far as the SDAMs go, besides just doing them to help you, in big picture, before you go out into the field, I would encourage you to review the manuals. You can't just wing it. I feel like, especially if you're a seasoned delineator, you're like, this is just one more thing. The words will be all the same. It's just in a different form. I can do this. It's very different. It's a lot more information than you're used to collecting. So please read the manual and then decide where you can streamline, pun intended, your motive and modify your protocols while you're in the field. Because ultimately, everything you collect in these forms goes into this online interface in a model. Well, in certain regions, right? Not the PNW, but it goes into this model, and it's an R. There's an R code, and you put on all of these parameters, and it spits you out, your regime determination.
Yeah.
And especially in the Arid West, the SDAM form has a lot more information than what actually goes into the model. So, there's nuance here, and you need to tailor it to what's appropriate. But a lot of times on my larger projects, I make a stripped down version that only collects what's in this model, just to save time. But still collecting the right information and doing it the right way, which we emphasize.
So on WildNote, right? You've added those stripped down questions to your form, right? So that you collect that data, and then you go to the web app later with that information, and then return back the data from the web app. And then do you input that into WildNote in any way, or you just know that that's the determination of the SDAM, so I've got that in my narrative?
Yeah, so what the SDAM form in WildNote that I've built, it has all of the questions that go into so let me back up. The SDAM Arid West form includes the questions that go into the model plus some. So I've made a form that's just the model. And then at the end, the question is the regime determination. And I have a big, huge note that says you cannot select the regime if you have not run this model. Right. So in the field, that gets left blank. Right. And then after we get back from the field, yes, you have to manually put this in for every single aquatic resource, and then go back and make your regime determination. There's a way on the web interface where you can make a PDF of each thing you do. And maybe if you're doing under 10 aquatic resources, you can do that. But I don't PDF the result from the interface because that's just way too time consumptive for, you know, like 100 resources. But I state that we follow this protocol, and I state that we run it through the model. And I don't think anyone's I haven't been deemed yet for not getting PDFs from the website. I try to be full disclosure on it. But you might consider PDFing it if you are doing fewer aquatic resources. Oops. Okay. So another thing that you should do before going into the field, another pre-field planning, and this speaks to the new resources that you have to look at. Well, there's a question in there on SDAMs about EPT taxa. So these are in aquatic inverts that are in these 3 orders. If you're a fly fisher, then you know these very well, and you can identify them, no problem, probably. But these are indicators. Some of them on their own are a perennial indicator. Some of them are an intermittent indicator, and it's questions in the forms. There's this beautiful app called Pocket Macros that's free. And if you're a botanist and you love dichotomous keys, you'll love this app because it's dichotomous keys with photos that get you to the order level, which is the level you need to identify the aquatic inverts to input into the form. So originally I was like, am I going to have to make these keys? Because the manuals have some photos, but you can't sit there and flip through a manual. And then I found this, and it's beautiful. Check it out.
Right on. It looks beautiful.
It's a good one. Yeah, so I highly recommend this. And then another thing that's required is canopy cover estimate, at least in the Western Mountains and I think other regions. And they want you to use a convex spherical densiometer, which is yet another tool you would need to carry out in the field. We've tried a couple different apps, and based on what my field crews have said, this app, which is called Percentage Cover, and I think it's $1.99, seems to be the closest to the convex spherical densiometer. So we've been using that. Or you can just use what my favorite plant ecology professor would say, just use ocular estimation. Just use your eyeballs and estimate.
Fancy.
And again, the protocols say you're supposed to use this tool and take it's a certain number of samples, but that is too cumbersome for us. So this is something where we're trying to make it a little less time intensive. So that's a tip that I use, TBD if someone decides they don't like it at an agency, but this seems to be good so far.
Hey, Sheryl, there's a question kind of regarding the pocket macros from Levi Sparks. They require families now and not just the EPTs. Is that right?
That might be, yeah. I don't know if that's, whatever my understanding is, whatever this app can get you to is the correct level that at least I've needed in the Western Mountains in the Arid West. And full disclosure, when I'm doing work in the Arid West, there's like never water. So I haven't done a lot of like dip netting and looking for these guys, but that could be right. So yeah, double check out the app. But I think the short answer is you're going to need something to help you identify. Yeah, that could be right though.
You said when they went from the beta to the released SDAM for Arid West, it changed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. That helps. It's a lot to keep on top of. Yeah. So this might be at least a starting point, and you might need to go further.
So as a non-taxonomy person, so what's the difference between families and EPTs in this conversation?
So originally it was, EPT, that's the order, and then family is one level more fine scale that you have to identify.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Good point. Thank you for that. Okay. We talked about the percentage cover. So just the high level takeaway for the SDAMs, not wanting to get into the nitty gritties too much, but you need to plan ahead. You're going to need some additional equipment or apps. There's also questions about the slope of the stream bed. We use ocular estimation on that as well. Some people want to bring, whole tools out to get that. It just depends on the level of effort you can expend on how much ground you're trying to cover and people power. So just look into that before you get out there. And how are you going to collect the data? Like, ask yourself these questions.
Yeah.
Sheryl, there's also, if I'm not mistaken, on the EPA website, there's some really good training material for the SDAMs that they've released in concurrence with the forms and protocol.
Yep, there's some good videos. Yeah, if you can navigate to that website. The R code, I should also mention, it's R and it's open source. So you can kind of get in there and see what's going on if you're an R person.
We're trying to get that into WildNote. Kristen's putting her big brain on that.
That would be great. Okay, so moving on to the ordinary high water mark form. So as was mentioned, there is the National Rapid form that came out in September 2024. The Army Corps, there's someone in the Army Corps in the LA district who had a major role in developing this. So, I have heard through the grapevine that they are pushing this form. And so then I went and checked all the websites of the districts I'm used to. So Sacramento and San Francisco list the National Rapid form, and they also list the ordinary high or the Arid West form as together. The LA district just lists the new one, and they want you to use that. So I think, there's a lot of nuance in this work and from district to district. And I think it's important to communicate with your districts at the core and find out what they want. I've found my Sacramento and SF people really easy to talk to. They might be overloaded now with federal stuff going on, but don't be afraid to reach out and ask them. So I would ask what they prefer you to use, since these two websites don't explicitly say.
Right.
And the reason why I bring this up and what gives me pause on the national form, especially in the Arid West, is that the national form it really emphasized ordinary high water mark indicators, as one would think based on what the form is called. But there are a lot of open-ended kind of narrative questions in there. And then it doesn't build in a way to make you thinking about the geomorphic units. So the Arid West form gets you thinking about compound systems with floodplains and low flow channels, islands, things like that. That's gone with the national form, at least in the form itself. So, if you're out there with less experienced delineators, they might come out on a site like this and just see these blue lines. and call that the ordinary high and move on and completely forget that there are these other geomorphic units involved. That's just something that I feel concerned about, that the new form doesn't really build that in. There's no question about drawing a cross section. I think you can add it in the open-ended box, but it's a little more loosey-goosey in that sense. So I would like to continue using the Arid West ordinary high form, unless I am told do not use that, because I think it makes you think about it a little more in an appropriate way for the region. But again, don't come after me, Army Corps.
Yeah.
I'm just
Cheryl, would you recommend for folks who might be relatively new to this to at least read the Arid West, even if their region is requiring this general?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that that's what would be expected, is you should, yes, read the regional supplement and understand how things can be different, along with the national supplement, or the national rapid manual, I should say. But yeah, I think, sometimes, and this is speaking from a consulting perspective, people can just get shoved into things and not have a broad understanding of like a bigger picture understanding. You just get dropped out there with this form and you're checking boxes.
Right.
And this new version doesn't really prompt you to think in the way that you should be in the Arid West, which is fine if you're very experienced and you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a few more questions coming in. Alyssa St. John says, this may have already been covered, but when do we use the ordinary high water mark versus the SDAM?
You use both. Sorry, that's an obvious thing I should have said, and it's like I forgot to say it. You need both. The ordinary high watermark form, you need both when you're delineating something that is not a wetland, unless it's a pond. So there's always nuance and caveats, right? So if you're delineating a stream, you need the ordinary high watermark form because you're locating the aquatic resource, and which is defined by the Corps as the ordinary high watermark line, right? So you need that form that checks the indicators, that finds that location. You might get more info like top of bank for your state agencies, right? So that's just like, where is the literal stream? Like, we don't care what regime it has, where is it? Mm-hmm. And then the SDAM is where you're going to collect information on the indicators that give you the answer once you put it in the online interface as to regime, perennial, intermittent, ephemeral, or there's fun answers like less than perennial. There's in-between answers too. But you need to have both if you want to make consultation streamline. The bare minimum is the ordinary high, and then the SDAM you should do to capture regime information. It's a good question. So on any one stream, you're going to have at least two forms if you're doing both.
So when I'm looking at a stream or even a dry riverbed, is the ordinary high watermark kind of when it like changes its depth? Is that
it can be?
Okay.
There's several indicators. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
So I could just go back to the form. So you can look. There's some geomorphic indicator section.
Got it.
There's all of these different indicators you can have. And in this example, this orange cross section is actually a mesa cross section, but it's marking different indicators where we saw, debris or cut banks or sediment sorting, or maybe an island or scour. All those different indicators together tell you where that
where it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing
you can't use ocular. What did you call that? Ocular.
Well, you're using your eyeballs to look at the indicators, and you're making a call. Yeah, ocular estimation is my favorite phrase. How do you do that?
Ocular estimation. Yeah,
it's so fancy.
Yeah, go ahead with the other questions.
Yeah, Jess Jones says, do you recommend an app for determining slope besides ocular estimation?
I haven't found one that seems to be good enough. And honestly, I'm working in systems that are so flat, and I've messed around with the R model, like putting in changing numbers, and in the systems I work in, the changing between like 0 and 5 doesn't make a difference in my answer. If that's the only difference. So no, I haven't. If anyone finds a great app, I'd love it. I'm not sure if it's, your phone has a level thing in it, like iPhones do, but I don't think that you can use that. So it's mostly just like, I'm standing on one end, someone's standing at the end, and we're kind of just estimating the drop in slope. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. The other bit I forgot to mention on SDAMs that's kind of new is they want a bank full width. So, that's been another fun conversation. Is bank full the same of top of bank, or does top of bank and bank full sometime overlap with ordinary high? That's also discussed in the national manual, and it seems still a little gray, fuzzy to me, but it's not black and white.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joe Morgan says he's making a comment. Both Arid West and Western Mountain SDAMs use specific perennial indicator families. They are mostly EPT, but also include Elmidae or Coleoptera.
Beetles, right? I think that's what Coleoptera is. Okay. Thank you for that. So check me, please. Check this app and make sure it flows with it. I think I don't think I did any delineations this season with water in them at all. So that tells you how many aquatic inverts I looked at this year. Not very many. Thanks for that.
And then we have a question. Does the new National Ordinary High Watermark form require a cross-section drawing like the Arid West Ordinary High Watermark form does?
No, it doesn't. I think in the open boxes, the kind of open-ended questions that are like, do you have more evidence for this? You could add it. And I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with that cross-section drawing, because it's kind of annoying, but at the same time, it kind of makes you slow down and think about, in compound systems, the geomorphic units themselves and what am I actually looking at. That you can kind of get, I guess, from a photograph, but no. So the short answer is it's not required in the form that I can tell, but you can add it. Yep.
Got it.
So consider moving to the National Rapid Ordinary High Watermark form. I'm considering it. Still not quite sure in the Arid West. And again, like I said, reach out to your Army Corps person, because I found them really great. They don't want to drag things out longer, and neither do you. So it's just like, what do you want? And I will do it. And
we built a California Rapid Assessment Methodology form and workflow in Wild Note Cram. And it seemed to me that it wasn't that rapid, honestly. Like, is that the same for this one? Is it really rapid, or is it?
I think that the rapid, so what's funny is can you see at the top, the agency disclosure notice? It says it's estimated to average 30 minutes per response.
Is response the whole thing, or responses each?
It says including reviewing and the instructions, which I'm like, reading the whole manual is not. And then it's searching existed data sources, gathering, maintaining the data, et cetera. Wow. 30 minutes. I think you gain time on the number of forms you're filling out. So if you're in the field, it'll get faster. SDAM is what is very time consumptive. It is almost too much. It becomes a prohibitively time consumptive, I think, if you don't think about creative ways to get the data faster. Yeah.
Okay.
But all that to say, reach out to your district. Same message with the ordinary high. Plan ahead, calibrate your teams in the field, especially in complicated systems. Like, I like to go out together and be like, hey, where do you think the ordinary high is? Where do I think it is? Let's talk about it. What indicators are we seeing? And use your regional supplements, because a lot of those have good pictures of indicators. How are you going to tie your spatial data to the forms? What information needs capturing? In California, I need to get top of bank info or riparian canopy information for CDFW. And what about those open-ended fields? If you have a lot of people collecting data, like, how loosey-goosey do you want to get with it? Do you want to be really specific about what I want in this box? I tell my teams to try to not leave anything empty, even if your answer is none or NA. So think about what you want in those fields so that things are consistent.
How do you tie spatial data to your form, Sheryl? What's your process for that?
So right now we just make sure that we're using the unique ID that's on the Wild Note form that we create for the aquatic resource, and that it's the same that we use in field maps. And one of the big gaps is that, the ordinary high and the SDAMs, they don't have a place. Well, SDAMs does, but ordinary high doesn't have a place to put ordinary high width or depth. And there is also nowhere to put top of bank info or riparian info. So I've always just built hybrid forms that add these extra fields so that I can grab that info.
Yeah.
And I also have it in field maps, so it's repeated in 2 places, which some people might find cumbersome, but
Right.
if it gets not filled out in one place, maybe it's filled out in the other,
Yeah.
and you can have a backup.
Yeah.
What's the largest? Good point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, sorry, Nancy. So what's the largest team you've taken out to do this work?
Probably 10.
10 people.
At once, yeah, but over long efforts, yeah. I mean, we
And
had
how'd it go with the open-ended questions?
Mostly they get left blank.
Yeah.
If you don't plan, because people are just like, I already checked the boxes, I'm moving on.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So still, and I haven't used the national rapid form on larger efforts yet, because I've been doing a lot in the Arid West.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joe Morgan says, can you go into more detail about what parts of the SDAM protocol you find too time consuming?
You're supposed to note, so there's I'm very bad memorizing numbers, so I'm going to be general. You're supposed to run the SDAM analysis for a stream, for a length of the stream, and you're supposed to map the drop a point on, you're supposed to get the coordinates for the upstream and the downstream end, and you're supposed to spend X amount of minutes looking for, with a dip net, with your EP for your aquatic inverts. And so that is all additional information that doesn't really end up going anywhere like on a figure. It's just documenting the reach of the stream that you looked at. Oftentimes the projects I work on, it's like just cutting a section of a stream. So that's the stream reach that I use. But yeah, so that's extra information, is mapping the upper and the lower reach. And there's, I think, photo requirements for that. The EPT component can take a lot of extra time. And the canopy, if you do it their way, which is using the densiometer and gathering multiple numbers and averaging it out. Yeah, those are just a few I can think of off the top of my head. They also have more requirements for documenting vegetation within 1/2 of the stream bed width. If you have hydrophytes or upland, which if you're doing, you should be thinking that way because you're a wetland delineator already. So there's extra, not just documenting changes in vegetation, but specific species with their indicator status. So it's a lot. It's a lot of extra information.
Kind of on the back of that for SDAM, do you ever use APT information to supplement your SDAM results?
I only use APT when I'm writing my aquatic resource delineation report to determine if conditions were normal.
What's APT?
Antecedent precipitation tool. It's this tool that the Army Corps has developed, and it runs in this. It's this real. You have to download it, and it runs in Microsoft. I'm not a computer person, but it's like a whole program, and you put in your lat long, and it correlates data from weather stations around your area for the antecedent precipitation to tell you if the precipitation conditions are normal at the time that you do the study. So that can be informative. But I think the idea with SDAMs is that you're looking for indicators. So even, I think, to think about how to answer this, you should be able to use SDAMs even in a less than normal, not normal year, but you're going to want to consider that and think about like what might have changed from your data collection. So I don't use that really to determine regime. It's more just like, is the baseline normal or not?
Right.
Yeah.
And then before you move on, B. Shelton, when you measure the height of the ordinary high water mark, do you use a tape measure to measure from the toe of the bank, or use a GPS to get the height above sea level?
Yeah, that's another great one. So I know that there were recent guidelines that just came out from the Corps about recommendations for delineations that involve like not sub-meter accuracy, but like centimeter accuracy, like to a engineering like level. And they said they're recommended. So I'm treating them as recommendations and not requirements right now. So for the depth, if that's what was the question, it's ocular estimation, or we have measures and we'll take a couple points. But I tend to I don't map a lot of my drainages. We map the center line because they're not very wide, and then we buffer them out and average it across the whole thing. Same thing with depth. We'll take a couple measurements and average it out. And yeah, I don't know if that helps.
And that suffices.
All right, that's all the questions for right now.
Okay. So putting it all together, we kind of talked about this a little bit. Think about if you want to use the national rapid or your regional ordinary high watermark form, what's appropriate, what does your core office want or require, and consider building a hybrid form. So this is a screenshot of a delineation I just did, and you can see I have an ordinary high and an SDAM hybrid form. That way, my crews can just open one thing and get all of the information in one place. And this would be with an abbreviated SDAM with only the questions that go into the model. And then the ordinary high form, I've built it in because WildNote's so great with logic to where if it's a single drainage, a bunch of questions go away, or if it's a compound system, you get the extra questions to address the geomorphic units. But this way for a drainage, there's one form, that gets all of the information
for each one. So just a plug for WildNote here. This is the power of the platform, right? So we have these library forms for wetland delineation, ordinary high water mark, and so forth. But you can take those and edit them for your workflow. So this is where Cheryl's used that power to get what she needs out in the field.
Yeah, what happened from this is I was on a fairly large delineation 2 summers ago. It was really hot. And we had the separate forms. And after one day of 6 of us doing the separate forms, I was like, I just cannot.
Yeah.
So that night I stayed up and built the hybrid form.
Yeah.
Because it was just way too cumbersome.
Right.
And, that being said, the outputs that come with my reports, I've never had someone from an agency be like, where, except for the wetland determination data form, I've never had them be like, where is your literal perfectly formatted form? Usually this gets presented in tabular form altogether because it's a lot of aquatic resources,
right?
In a table at the end of my report, and we collect the required information in the format of these forms, but I'm not like, here's your literal form. And that's been okay for me. So I don't tend to get as tripped up on a perfect PDF form as much as just getting the data.
Have you been able to use the species export for that?
Yeah, just getting a species list.
Yeah, from WildNote.
Yeah. Yes, and it's really great because on aquatic resources delineation reports, I like to do a incidentally observed species list.
Right.
So it's really great for that to get it out, and that will get you kind of your initial species list. And then sometimes I like to rerun it through CalFlora in California to check some things.
Okay.
Because I'm a taxonomy nerd.
Yes, you are. And you taxonomy nerds are the hardest to please.
Yes.
Especially in California.
Yes, very true. So just think about all of this. I would love people's thoughts on how to deal with this online regime calculator. That's a real bottleneck. I know WildNote, you all are thinking about it. Thank you. Please keep thinking about it. And then just thinking about how you're going to document some spatial components that aren't necessarily built into these forms.
Right.
What else do I have? Oh, this was my last slide. This feels like the elephant in the room. On November 17th, the EPA published proposed revisions to the definitions of waters of the U.S. And I don't know if anyone else has read through it. I have, and I was a little bit like, whoa, some of it clears things up, but some of it is has the potential to change a lot of the data, some of the data we collect when we do these delineations in ways that I don't understand how we could possibly get the information. So it's a little bit alarming. There's something about wetlands needing continuous surface water, and somehow you have to document that, and using a wetland determination data form isn't enough. So without getting too far into the weeds, because we have to wait till it's final, that's out. So there might be an extra burden of data we need to collect. All of this to get rid of some jurisdiction, which on its face, some people are like, that's great, there's less protections, but we have to collect more data to back it up now.
Right.
So I would recommend like go on, check out the fact sheet, think about how this might change things, submit comments. I'm just plugging the Swamp School. I was reading some of the comments, and they made a really good comment that basically says, we already collect all of this data. Like, why are you doing this to us? But in
They
a really,
did? Okay.
yeah, it's a great comment.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to put that out there, that there might be some additional information depending on how this shakes out that we need to get.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's all I have in my slide
Alyssa
deck.
St. John had a couple of comments. She said, just general comment, I also do incident lists of both wildlife and plants and compile them in an access database after the field. And for continuous surface connections, I know the NHD has moved into a different software. So I've been using NHD to see where surface flows and connections originate in coordination with NWI until the new software is available through the US government.
What's NHD?
The National Hydrography, that word is so hard for me, data set.
Okay.
And it has like the blue line features on USGS topo maps was the origin, I think.
Okay.
So we use those to develop our base maps, NHD and NWI, and they can be a good starting point. And mostly we end up using them to collect negative data in the Arid West, unless it's a very established perennial stream. You're like, this isn't actually here. Your data is old. So yeah, it can be helpful. Also, we kind of joke about how inaccurate it can be sometimes.
And the NWI is the National Wetland Inventory?
Yep.
That's a database of our existing wetlands, essentially? Or
that's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service manages that, right. I believe. Yeah.
And Brian Topping, who's with the EPA, is on the call right now.
Oh,
Brian, yes. And he says, reminder for WildNote, make sure to use the latest R code for the SDAMs version 3.0.1 from October of 25.
Hey,
so
Brian.
Is that automatically updated in the interface, the online interface?
Brian.
Should we elevate Brian?
Maybe he's talking about the GitHub where you can download it. Yeah.
Yep. He says, Brian, yes. Do you foresee building out an API on that web app so that WildNote could integrate with that R code?
Please.
Yes. We haven't gotten a yes yet.
No answer.
No answer yet. Could WildNote build and offer an API to you?
I'd be happy to help out with that. Yeah. Don't see it in my budget. Okay, maybe we can offer that as an open source pull request. So
I saw a couple of hands go up. If you have questions, pop them into the question and answer. I think Tony and there was somebody else who put their hand up. So feel free to pop your questions into the
So
Q&A.
That was our Kristen's crazy ideas, Brian. Your timing was absolutely perfect.
Perfect.
It's really Cheryl's crazy ideas, but to integrate WildNote with this R logic that will do the modeling to determine whether it's perennial, intermittent, or ephemeral. So that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think I felt a little blindsided, and I don't know if others did, because we've been using the beta mode or the beta version of SDAMs in the Arid West, and it was a nice flow chart. Like you could just have the flow chart in the field and figure it out. And then the final version came out, and they're like, "No, we're using a model." It was like, that's a huge change.
That's a big change. Yeah,
it's a big change, and it ends up causing a big bottleneck for us.
I wonder if it's just that much more accurate than to use the model versus the flow chart.
I mean, I trust it. They built it for a reason, and it was really vetted. I think it's great. It kind of takes it out of your hands as far as like, the guesswork goes, but it just we need a better way of using it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're out of time here. You did such a great job, Sheryl. Thank you so much.
Wonderful
for having me.
Levi says, in my experience going from the beta to released Arid West SDAM increased time by 20 minutes per site.
Yes, that sounds about right to me. It's a pretty big burden.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So what's next here, Nancy?
Next up, I don't know, 2026. We're working on other aquatic resource type things right now. If you're in the Ohio area, the HHEI and QHEI are being worked on. And
I think people use those outside of Ohio, don't they?
Yes, and there's some surrounding states that use that as well. And we will be publishing the SDAM as well, and it'll probably be a combined form where you pick your region and the right things will pop up for you. So we're working on that, and then it'll be to Kristen to figure out how to actually bring the R code in a way that you don't have to tediously input that. So that'll be fun. And thank you, Aggie. Great presentation, very engaging. The flow was good. Not to mention the great info. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.